I never imagined the day would come when my own daughter would look me in the eyes and say, "Mom, I think it's best if you move into a nursing home." My name is Helen Crawford. I'm 76 years old, and those words still echo through my heart like a cracked bell on a Sunday morning. For most of my life, I believed family meant love, loyalty, and care, but the day Melissa said that, I realized family can also mean disappointment dressed in polite concern. Melissa Crawford Rhodes, my only daughter, was always the bright one. Ambitious, organized, living in that big white house with her husband, Ethan Rhodes, and their little girl, Sophie. She had a good job as an interior designer, and Ethan was a civil engineer. They were the perfect suburban family, the kind I used to pray for her to have when she was a child. But somewhere along the way, that family didn't have room for me anymore. It all began one rainy Thursday. I was living alone after my husband passed away 3 years prior. I'd fallen in the kitchen, bruised my hip a little, and called Melissa to let her know. I didn't expect her to react the way she did. She showed up the next morning, eyes full of worry and guilt. "Mom, this isn't safe for you," she said. "You shouldn't be living alone like this." I smiled and told her it was just a small accident, but she wasn't listening. She already had a brochure in her hand, a glossy pamphlet with smiling elderly people playing bingo. "It's a wonderful place, Mom," she insisted. "You'll have people your age around you, and they take great care of residents." I wanted to laugh. My daughter, the same girl I carried through fevers and nightmares, was now sending me away to strangers. I tried to reason with her. "Honey, I'm not that old. I still cook, I read, I drive to church on Sundays." But she cut me off. "Mom, please don't make this harder than it needs to be." That's when I saw it, the exhaustion behind her eyes. Not concern. Convenience. I felt like a suitcase she'd been carrying too long. When Ethan walked in later, he avoided my gaze. He muttered something about how it's only temporary and for your safety. Even Sophie, my sweet 12-year-old granddaughter, hugged me tightly and whispered, "Grandma, I don't want you to go." I told her I'd be fine. I lied. Because deep down, I wasn't fine. I was breaking. The nursing home was called Willow Springs Care Center, and the day they dropped me off, I remember gripping Melissa's hand as if I could somehow stop her from letting go. She kissed my forehead and said, "I'll visit every week, Mom. I promise." That promise lasted 2 visits. Life at Willow Springs was a quiet kind of misery. Days bled into one another, morning pills, tasteless meals, endless card games. I made a few friends, Janet Moore, a retired schoolteacher with a sharp tongue, and Randall Pierce, a former jazz musician who still hummed his trumpet solos between naps. They kept me sane, but at night, when the halls went silent, I'd lie awake wondering how Melissa could forget so easily. Months passed before I realized how little I heard from her. The visits stopped. Calls became texts. "Busy week, Mom. Next time, I promise." I started counting next times. There were 24 of them before she finally showed up again, and not because she missed me. No, she came because she needed something. It was late autumn when she arrived, looking thinner, paler, and strangely nervous. She sat beside my bed and took a deep breath. "Mom, I need your help." For a moment, I thought she was joking. My help? The same mother she'd tucked away like a forgotten photograph? She told me Ethan had fallen ill, a serious infection that had kept him in the hospital for weeks. His recovery was slow, and she was struggling to keep up with everything. Sophie's school, her job, the bills. "I don't know who else to turn to," she whispered, tears glistening in her eyes. I didn't say anything. I just looked at her, my daughter, desperate, fragile, finally human again. For the first time in months, she needed her mother. That night, I sat in my small room staring at the ceiling. My heart was torn between anger and love. She'd set me away when I needed her most, but now she was the one in need. I thought about Ethan lying in a hospital bed, about Sophie missing her father. Could I really hold on to my pain when my family was falling apart? The next morning, I spoke to the head nurse, Dr. Kendra Lawson, a kind woman who always treated me like more than just a patient. "Dr. Lawson," I said quietly, I may need to take a leave for a while. My family needs me. She smiled gently. Helen, I think you already know what the right thing to do is. When Melissa came back 2 days later, she expected rejection. Instead, I told her I'd help. She burst into tears and hugged me tighter than she had in years. I wanted to believe it was love, not guilt, that made her cry. As we drove away from Willow Springs, I looked out the window at the fading building behind me. Part of me was relieved to leave that place. Another part wondered if I was walking back into a different kind of prison, one built not from walls, but from old wounds. I didn't know it then, but returning to Melissa's home would uncover truths I had never imagined and force me to confront what family really meant. Because sometimes the people who abandon you are the same ones who will need saving. And sometimes forgiveness hurts more than betrayal. If you've ever felt forgotten by your own family, don't scroll away, and upcoming twist will make you rethink what love really means. When I returned to Melissa's house after all those months in Willow Springs, it didn't feel like coming home. The same white house with the lilac shutters stood tall and elegant, but there was something heavy in the air, an invisible fog of tension and unspoken things. I stepped out of the car slowly, clutching my worn handbag, and looked around the front yard where I used to plant tulips with little Sophie. The flowers were gone. So was the laughter. Melissa hurried ahead to open the door, saying softly, "Come in, Mom," like she was inviting a stranger. Inside, the house looked different, colder, cleaner, and quieter. The faint smell of antiseptic lingered, probably from Ethan's illness. My eyes went straight to the couch where he used to sit with his coffee every morning. Now it was empty, just a folded blanket and some unread mail on the side table. "How's Ethan?" I asked, setting my bag down. Melissa hesitated before answering. "He's home now, resting in the bedroom. Doctor says he's recovering, but it's slow. He's weak." I could hear the fatigue in her voice. She'd been doing this alone, caring, worrying, holding everything together. I wanted to comfort her, but the memory of her walking away from me at Willow Springs kept my arms still. "Would you like to see him?" she asked quietly. I nodded. When I entered their bedroom, I barely recognized him. Ethan looked pale, frail, and older than his 48 years. His skin had lost color, and his voice trembled when he said, "Helen, it's good to see you." I smiled softly, pretending not to notice the surprise in his eyes. Maybe he hadn't expected me to come. Maybe he didn't believe I could still care after what they'd done. "I heard you've had a rough time," I said, pulling the chair closer to his bedside. "We all do, sooner or later." He gave a small nod. "Guess karma caught up with me." His words hung heavy in the air. Melissa shot him a sharp look, like she didn't want him to say more. That small exchange told me something had been left unsaid between them, something deeper than just sickness. In the following days, I settled into a quiet routine. I cooked meals, helped Ethan take his medicine, and cleaned the house while Melissa juggled work and worry. At first, it felt like old times, almost peaceful. But beneath the surface, cracks began to show. One afternoon, I overheard a heated phone conversation. Melissa was pacing the hallway, whispering furiously, "No, I can't make the payment this week. I told you I'd have it by next month. Please, just give me time." Her voice broke at the end. When she turned and saw me standing there, her expression changed. A forced smile, a lie in progress. "Just work stuff, Mom," she said quickly. "Clients are being difficult." I didn't press, but my gut told me the truth. Money trouble. Later that evening, while folding laundry, I found a letter tucked under a pile of towels. It was from Westwood Medical Billing, stamped in red. Final notice. My hands trembled as I read the total, over $12,000 owed for Ethan's hospital care. My heart sank. So that's why she came for me. Not just out of love, but desperation. That night, as I tucked Sophie into bed, she whispered, "Grandma, are you staying for a long time this time?" I brushed her hair gently. "For as long as you need me, sweetheart." She smiled sleepily. "Mom cries a lot lately. She thinks I don't hear her." My heart broke a little more. I kissed her forehead, promising silently that she wouldn't have to watch her home fall apart. Days turned into weeks, and Ethan's condition improved slowly. But Melissa's didn't. She looked thinner, her eyes hollowed from lack of sleep and too many worries. One morning over breakfast, she snapped at me out of nowhere. "You're using too much of the good coffee, Mom. That bag was supposed to last the week." I looked at her calmly. "Melissa, it's just coffee." She slammed the cup down. "It's not just coffee. You don't understand the pressure I'm under." Her voice cracked, and she turned away. I didn't say anything. I knew this wasn't really about me. It was about the guilt she'd been carrying since the day she left me in that nursing home. And guilt has a strange way of turning kindness into resentment. That afternoon, while Ethan rested, I decided to clean the small storage room by the garage. It was cluttered with boxes and old furniture, and Melissa had mentioned she wanted it organized. As I moved things around, a shoebox fell from the top shelf, scattering papers across the floor. I bent down to gather them, but one paper caught my eye. A bank statement. The name on it wasn't Melissa's or Ethan's. It was Carol Danner, the caregiver who used to look after Ethan while Melissa worked. My breath caught. I remembered that woman, polite, efficient, always smiling. But what was her name doing on a joint account statement with Ethan's? I flipped through more papers. There were receipts, hotel stays, jewelry purchases, restaurant bills, all dated around the same time Melissa sent me to Willow Springs. My heart pounded. Ethan hadn't just been sick physically. He'd been hiding something. And Melissa, she'd known. Maybe that was the real reason she pushed me away, because she couldn't bear for me to see the truth unraveling in her own home. That evening, as I helped Ethan with his dinner, I looked at him differently. His eyes avoided mine every time I tried to talk. Melissa was quiet too, unusually so. The air between them was heavy, brittle. When Sophie ran into the kitchen to show her drawing, Ethan smiled faintly, but didn't say much. He was slipping back into silence, and Melissa was pretending not to notice. Later that night, I found her sitting alone on the back porch, her face lit by the porch light and streaked with tears. I sat beside her, and for a long moment, neither of us spoke. Then she whispered, "You found them, didn't you?" I turned to her slowly. "The bank statements," I said softly. She nodded, looking down. "It was before he got sick," she said. I thought I could forgive him. But when I couldn't, I sent you away because I didn't want anyone to see how broken I was." The truth hit me like cold rain. She hadn't sent me away because I was a burden. She'd done it out of shame. She turned to me, eyes red. "He ended it with her right before he got sick." I didn't even get the chance to be angry before everything fell apart. I reached for her hand, but before I could speak, a loud crash came from inside the house. We both ran in and froze. Ethan was on the floor, gasping for air, the dinner plate shattered beside him. His eyes wide, his lips pale. Melissa screamed, dropping to her knees.
"Dad, call 911, she cried.
But as I reached for the phone, something inside me hesitated. Because when I looked down at him, frail, sweating, and struggling, I couldn't help but remember the words he once said to me when I begged to stay in their home. "You'll be better off there, Helen. Trust me." Now, he was the one helpless on the floor, and I was the one standing over him. I called the ambulance, but part of me wondered, had this all been fate's way of making things right? And as the sirens wailed in the distance, I couldn't shake the feeling that the truth was still only half told, and the rest was about to change everything. The ambulance lights painted the night red and blue as Ethan was rushed away. I stood in the doorway clutching my shawl, the sound of sirens fading into the distance. Melissa was trembling beside me, tears streaming down her face. "He was fine just this morning," she whispered. "How could this happen again?" I didn't answer. My heart felt numb, my mind spinning with the secret I now carried, about Carol, about the lies that had quietly poisoned this family. When we got to the hospital, the corridors were too bright, too cold. Melissa spoke to the nurses while I sat in the waiting area with Sophie asleep in my lap. Hours passed before a doctor appeared. "He's stable for now," the doctor said. "But his condition is serious. His heart's weaker than we thought." Melissa broke down, sobbing into her hands. I placed a hand on her back, but inside I couldn't shake the thought. Life had a strange way of returning our choices to us. Over the next few days, Ethan stayed in the hospital, and Melissa rarely left his side. I stayed home to care for Sophie, cooking, cleaning, pretending everything was normal. But inside, I felt the weight of something darker building. One evening, I went to check the mailbox and found a thick envelope addressed to Melissa from Westwood Medical Billing. My curiosity got the better of me. I opened it and froze.
It wasn't a bill this time.
It was a final notice of property lien. If she didn't pay the medical debt soon, they could seize the house. That night, when Melissa came home from the hospital, I showed her the letter. She went pale. "I didn't want you to see that," she said, her voice shaking. "I was going to handle it." I looked at her firmly. "How, Melissa? With what money?" She looked away. "I don't know. I thought if Ethan got better, maybe I could sell the car, or—" Her words trailed off, and I realized how cornered she felt. Then, something unexpected happened. She turned on me. "You wouldn't understand, Mom. You had your house paid off for years. You never had to worry about this kind of thing." Her tone stung. "You mean before you sold it?" I said quietly. Her head snapped up. "What are you talking about?" "Before you sold my house without telling me?" I said. Her eyes widened. "How did you?" I handed her another letter I'd found tucked in the same box as the bank statements, a copy of a sale record from 2 years ago, with her signature on it. "You said you were renting it while I was at Willow Springs."
But you sold it, Melissa.
"You sold my home." She stepped back, tears filling her eyes. "I had no choice, Mom. Ethan's business was falling apart, and the bills," her voice broke. "We were drowning. I told myself it was temporary, that I'd buy it back for you one day. But then she stopped. I finished for her. Then he betrayed you." She nodded, covering her face. "I was too ashamed to tell you. I thought if you found out, you'd never forgive me." I sank into the chair, my chest tightening. "Do you have any idea how it felt, Melissa? To sit in that nursing home day after day, wondering why my daughter, my only child, didn't want me?" My voice trembled. "And all along, you'd taken away the one place I still belonged." She broke down completely, falling to her knees. "I'm sorry, Mom. I was scared. I didn't know what else to do." For a long moment, we just sat there in silence, two broken women bound by regret. The next morning, Melissa went to the hospital early. I stayed home with Sophie again. Around noon, the phone rang. It was Ethan's doctor. "Mrs. Whitmore, I'm calling because your husband's condition has changed. He's asking for you, and only you." My stomach dropped. "You mean Helen?" I corrected. "I'm his mother-in-law." The doctor paused.
"No, ma'am."
He specifically said Helen. That's the name he asked for. My hand froze on the phone. "That's my name," I whispered. I drove to the hospital in a daze, my heart pounding. When I entered Ethan's room, he was awake, pale, and fragile, but his eyes followed me as soon as I stepped inside. "Helen," he rasped. "You came." I moved closer. "You asked for me," I said carefully. He nodded, his lips trembling. "I needed to tell someone the truth before it's too late." I glanced around nervously, half expecting Melissa to walk in. "Ethan, you should rest." He shook his head weakly. "I can't rest. Not until you know." I hesitated, but then he said something that froze me completely. "Carol wasn't the only one. Melissa doesn't know everything." I felt my stomach twist. "What do you mean?" He stared at the ceiling, tears in his eyes. "Carol blackmailed me. She said she'd tell Melissa about the other woman, about the money I'd hidden, unless I kept paying her. I didn't want to ruin the family, so I kept quiet. But when the stress got too much, my heart gave out. I thought it was karma, but it was Carol. She was giving me pills, too many. Said they'd help me sleep. I think she wanted me gone." My breath caught. "Ethan, are you saying—" He looked straight at me. "She was poisoning me, Helen." Slowly. My hands trembled. "Did you tell the police?" He coughed, shaking his head. "No proof. And I didn't want Melissa to suffer more." But I needed someone to know. Promise me you'll protect her. My throat tightened. I promise. Just then, Melissa appeared at the doorway, eyes red from crying. What's going on? She asked. Ethan looked at her, guilt flooding his face. Melissa, I'm sorry. But before he could say another word, his body convulsed. The monitor screamed. Nurses rushed in, shouting orders. I grabbed Melissa and pulled her back as they worked desperately to stabilize him. But within moments, the line went flat. The world went silent. Melissa collapsed in my arms, screaming his name. I held her, my own tears falling, but inside I was shaking for a different reason, because I now knew Ethan's death wasn't just fate. It was murder. Days later, after the funeral, the house felt hollow. Melissa stayed in her room most of the time, numb and distant. Sophie clung to me constantly, asking questions I couldn't answer. One evening, as I was making tea, the doorbell rang. I opened it and froze. It was Carol, standing there like a ghost from the past, holding a bouquet of lilies. I'm so sorry for your loss, she said softly, eyes darting past me into the house. I clenched the doorframe. You shouldn't be here. Her smile was calm, almost amused. Oh, Helen, you don't believe everything that man said on his deathbed, do you? My blood ran cold. You knew he confessed? She stepped closer. Ethan told everyone stories when he was sick. Pain does that to people. Her voice dropped lower. You'd do best to forget what he said. I stared at her, realizing that beneath her polished words and calm face was something sinister. You're not here for condolences, I said. You're here to make sure I stay quiet.
She didn't deny it.
You're a smart woman, Helen. Think of your daughter, your granddaughter. Haven't they suffered enough? She pressed the flowers into my hands, her perfume sharp and sickly. Let the dead stay buried. As she walked away, my hands shook. I looked down at the lilies, beautiful, white, and delicate, but the stems were dripping. Red liquid. My heart lurched until I realized it wasn't blood. It was dye, leaking from the wrapping. Still, the message was clear. Don't dig further. That night, I couldn't sleep. Ethan's words echoed in my mind. She was poisoning me. I went to the kitchen, opened the trash, and pulled out the pill bottles he'd been taking before the hospital. One label read Carol Danner, authorized caregiver dosage instructions. My pulse quickened. There it was, her name. Proof that she'd been involved long after she should have been out of their lives. The next morning, I confronted Melissa with the truth. He didn't die of heart failure, Melissa. He was poisoned. She looked at me, stunned. That's insane, Mom. The doctors, they didn't test for toxins, I interrupted. They just assumed it was his heart. I handed her the bottle. Look whose name is on it. Her hands trembled as she read the label. No, this can't be real. I saw the color drain from her face. She's dangerous, Melissa. And she knows we know. At that exact moment, a shadow moved outside the window. A car parked across the street. Unfamiliar. Black. Engine idling. I froze. Melissa turned slowly to look, fear flickering in her eyes. Mom, do you think? I didn't answer, because deep down, I already knew. Carol wasn't done with us yet. And this time, she wasn't just after Ethan. She was coming for what was left of our family. The night air outside was heavy, almost watchful. Melissa double-checked the locks while I stood by the window, watching the dark sedan idle across the street. Its headlights flicked off, and the silhouette of a woman stepped out. Even from that distance, I knew who it was. Carol Danner. My fingers tightened around the curtain. She's here, I whispered. Melissa froze. What do we do? We don't panic, I said, my voice steady even though my heart was racing. We document everything. She wants us afraid, not prepared. I grabbed my phone and started recording through the window as Carol placed an envelope on our porch and walked back to her car. The engine started, but instead of driving away, she sat there, staring at the house. When she finally left, we waited several minutes before stepping outside. Melissa picked up the envelope with trembling hands. Inside were photographs, some of Ethan, some of our house, some of me walking Sophie to school. And a single note. You don't know what you're getting into. Stop. Melissa gasped. She's watching us, Mom. She's stalking us. I took the note and folded it. Then it's time we stopped being the ones hiding. The next morning, I called Detective Rains, the officer who'd handled Ethan's medical report. He sounded weary, skeptical. Mrs. Whitmore, I told you, the autopsy found no foul play. You didn't test for the right things, I said firmly. There's a caregiver's prescription bottle under his name. It's not his doctor's signature. It's hers, Carol Danner's. He sighed. That's a serious accusation. I'm an old woman, detective, but not a liar, I snapped. Check the dosage history. You'll find she ordered refills long after she was dismissed. There was a pause, then a soft hum. All right, Mrs. Whitmore. I'll look into it. For 2 days, we heard nothing. Melissa barely slept, flinching at every sound. Sophie sensed something wrong but didn't understand. Grandma, is someone trying to hurt us? She asked one night as I tucked her in. No, sweetie, I whispered, brushing her hair. Grandma's just making sure everyone stays safe. That same night, a knock echoed through the hallway. 3 sharp raps. My heart stuttered. I opened the door to find Carol again, smiling faintly, dressed too perfectly for midnight. You called the police, she said. I stood tall. Yes, Carol, because you murdered my son-in-law. She laughed softly, a sound that chilled me. Murder? Don't be dramatic, Helen. He was already falling apart. I just helped nature finish what it started. Melissa appeared behind me, her face pale. You poisoned him. Carol's eyes glittered. I did what I had to. He was going to ruin everything. Do you have any idea how much money he stole? From me? From his clients. I narrowed my eyes. So you took it back by killing him. Her lips curled. Call it balancing the scales. Before Melissa could lunge forward, I held her arm. What do you want, Carol? Silence, she said simply. You tell the police what you think you know, and I'll tell them what I actually have. She reached into her bag and pulled out a small flash drive, letting it dangle between her fingers. Ethan wasn't innocent, Helen. He funneled money into offshore accounts under your name. Guess whose bank statements will show that? Melissa gasped. You're lying. Carol smiled wider. Am I? She dropped the drive onto the porch. I can ruin you both faster than you can ruin me. And with that, she turned and walked away into the dark. Inside, Melissa collapsed onto the couch. She's framing us, Mom. We're finished. No, I said, picking up the drive carefully with a napkin. We're just beginning. I called Detective Rains again and told him everything, including the flash drive.
This time, his tone changed.
Bring it to the station tomorrow. Don't handle it more than you have to. The next morning, Melissa refused to leave Sophie alone, so we all went together. The drive contained transaction records, yes, in my name, but something else too. Correspondence between Ethan and Carol, messages that revealed her manipulation. The old woman will never know. One read. I'll get Melissa to sign whatever you need. Rains looked grim. This is enough to open a case, but it's messy. She covered her tracks well. Then I'll help you untangle them, I said. Over the following weeks, I became something I hadn't been in years. Determined, alert, alive. I dug through every file, every drawer, every old document Ethan had left behind. Melissa joined me, piecing together fragments of her husband's double life. We discovered that Ethan had indeed stolen from clients, but under Carol's direction. She'd used him as the fall guy, setting up accounts that funneled money to her own name under fake IDs. When Rains confirmed it, Melissa broke down. All this time, I hated him for lying to me, but he was just trying to keep us from losing everything. I hugged her tightly. Sometimes love makes people foolish, but that doesn't make it evil. One evening, Rains called with news. We've got enough to bring Carol in for questioning, he said. We just need her to show up somewhere public, so she can't claim harassment. I thought for a moment. She still visits the care facility, doesn't she? The one where I used to be?
Yes.
Why? Then that's where we'll find her. The next day, Melissa drove me to Willow Springs. The halls smelled the same, sterile and faintly of bleach. As we entered the garden courtyard, Carol was there, pruning flowers like nothing had happened. When she saw me, her expression faltered. "Helen, I didn't expect." "You never expect consequences," I interrupted. Rains and 2 officers stepped out from behind the hedges. Carol's face drained of color. "You set me up," she hissed. "No, Carol," I said quietly. "You set yourself up the moment you decided a man's life and his family were worth less than your greed." The officers moved in, reading her rights as she shouted, "You think you're clean, old woman? You're as guilty as he was." I met her glare calmly. Maybe once I was guilty of being blind, but not anymore. As they led her away, Melissa clung to me, trembling. "It's over," she whispered. "Almost," I replied. "Justice takes time, but it always comes." Weeks passed. The investigation cleared Ethan's name publicly, and the stolen funds were returned to the victims. Carol faced multiple charges. The house that once felt cursed grew warm again. Yet, even in peace, there was grief for what lies had cost us. One evening, I sat alone on the porch, watching Sophie chase fireflies in the yard. The quiet felt different now, no longer hollow, but healing. Melissa came out with 2 cups of tea and sat beside me. "Do you ever think things can really go back to normal?" she asked. I smiled softly. "Normal isn't what we get after pain, sweetheart. It's what we rebuild with it." She leaned on my shoulder, and for the first time in a long while, I felt like a mother again, not a burden, not a victim, but a piece of home that still mattered. But as the sun dipped below the trees, I couldn't shake one thought. Carol had been caught, yes, but someone like her never acted alone. A message blinked on my phone from an unknown number. "You shouldn't have gone that far, Helen." She wasn't the only one. The calm evening air turned heavy once more. I looked at Melissa laughing softly with Sophie, and silently promised myself, whatever storm was coming next, this time, I'd be ready. I used to believe closure came when justice was served, that once the guilty were caught, the pain would fade, the past would rest. But life isn't so neat. Even after Carol's arrest, the air around us felt heavy, as if her shadow lingered in every quiet corner of the house. The morning after I received that cryptic message, I sat by the window watching dawn break through the fog. The message still glowed on my phone. She wasn't the only one. For a moment, I wondered if it was just an echo of her manipulation, a seed of doubt meant to torment me. But something deep in my bones whispered otherwise. When Melissa came downstairs, I didn't tell her right away. She'd barely begun to sleep again. Her face had lost its color from months of grief, and I couldn't bear to add another layer of fear. Instead, I made breakfast like I used to when she was little, warm oatmeal with honey, cinnamon, and the quiet comfort of normalcy. "Mom," she said after a while, "I had a dream last night. Dad was sitting by the lake, talking to Ethan. They were both quiet, like they understood something I didn't." I smiled softly. Maybe they do. The dead see our truth more clearly than we do. Later that day, Detective Rains called. His voice was low, cautious. "Mrs. Whitmore, I wanted to update you. We found additional names tied to Carol's accounts, 2 administrators from the nursing home. Looks like they helped her funnel the money." My heart sank. So, the place that was supposed to care for people like me was part of it. "Afraid so. We're making arrests today. You'll likely need to testify again." After the call, I stood in silence for a long time. I remembered how helpless I'd felt when Melissa first sent me to that nursing home. The betrayal, the humiliation. But now that very place was being exposed. It struck me like divine symmetry. The same walls that once trapped me were about to bring others to justice. That evening, I told Melissa everything. She didn't cry this time. She just nodded, her face calm but fierce. "Then we'll go through it together. No more secrets." We spent the next few weeks preparing for court. I testified, my voice trembling at first, then growing stronger with each word. I spoke of what I'd seen, what Carol had confessed, and how the system that claimed to protect the elderly had been exploited by greed. The trial was long, cruel even. Carol refused to look at me, her expression empty, but when the guilty verdict was read, I saw something flicker behind her eyes. Not remorse, but defeat. The two administrators from Willow Springs were sentenced alongside her. For the first time, the silence that followed didn't feel ominous. It felt earned. Afterward, when Melissa and I walked out of the courthouse, she stopped on the steps and turned to me. "Mom, I don't know how to thank you. I thought putting you in that home was helping you. I thought I was giving you care, not abandoning you." I reached for her hand. "We all make choices we regret, sweetheart. But guilt is just love that hasn't found forgiveness yet." Tears welled in her eyes. "Can you ever forgive me?" I smiled gently. "I already did the day you came back for me." Months passed, and the rhythm of life returned, slow, tender, honest. Sophie started painting again, filling the house with color. Melissa began volunteering at a senior support center, helping families navigate the kind of choices that once broke ours. Sometimes she'd come home and tell me about an old man who reminded her of me, and we'd laugh until our sides ached. As for me, I found peace in small rituals, tending the garden, writing letters to Ethan that I never sent, baking on Sundays just to fill the house with warmth. I was no longer the woman waiting for someone to save her. I had become my own savior, and in doing so, I'd helped my daughter find her strength too. One late afternoon, I took Sophie for a walk by the lake. The same lake where her parents had once picnicked before life grew complicated. She skipped ahead, holding a jar, catching sunlight as if it were fireflies. "Grandma," she said suddenly, "do you think people who do bad things can ever be good again?" I thought for a long moment. Maybe not in the way we want them to be. But sometimes their mistakes teach the rest of us how to be better. That's their purpose. She smiled, as only a child can when the world still feels fixable. "Then I'll always be good." I laughed softly. "Then you'll be my greatest miracle." We sat on the bench as the sun dipped below the water. I felt Ethan there, in the quiet ripples. And for the first time, I didn't ache for what was lost. I thanked it, for the pain that turned to wisdom, for the betrayal that became strength, and for the daughter who learned that love isn't proven by control, but by coming back when it matters most. That night, as I tucked Sophie into bed, Melissa stood at the doorway, smiling. "You know," she whispered, "I don't think I sent you away, Mom. I think I sent you somewhere you were meant to come back from." I nodded, tears in my eyes. Sometimes, life has to break us open before it lets the light in. When she left the room, I lingered by the window, watching the stars scatter across the sky. Each one, I thought, was a story, a reminder that even after the darkest nights, something always shines through. And maybe that's what forgiveness truly is, not forgetting the pain, but finding peace beneath it. Because I was once the mother who was left behind, and now I am the home my family returns to.